tuned in to Teng Tools Muscle Garage, the home of New Zealand's toughest muscle cars, hot rods and street machines. Proudly brought to you by Teng Tools in association with Mountshop, Maguire's and Niedercar. This week, the Rowdy Rebel Roundup celebrates the way things were at Pukekohe Park Raceway, and we shed raid one cool collection belonging to Canterbury's Mal Hurrell. But first, an XM Hardtop with a quad-cam Boss heartbeat. Thanks to Niedercar, meet Michael Blackmore and his Retrotech 1964 Falcon.
I think it's probably the mechanical side of things. Always had a fascination for anything with wheels and motors on, whether or not it's dirt bikes, cars, you name it, anything that went fast. The garage is chocker full of car parts from this one, plus a few other vehicles, so it does take a fair bit of my time.
It seems an inspired choice now, but a decade or so back when Michael decided to jump into a new project, the XM wasn't at the top of his hit list, but being a two-door was. It was while holidaying in Australia that the search would begin in the familiar territory of Holden's HQ Monaro.
I think I just sort of liked it a little bit more than the Monaro. It was something a little bit different and really hadn't seen many of them around in New Zealand. It was a $2,000 rolling body, had all the glass and everything else shoved in the back seat. Guy used it for spare parts for a convertible. I brought it back to New Zealand, started collecting parts, badges and bits and pieces for it. From there, almost every panel's been replaced on it. The boot and roof are about the only really truly original panels, and then everything else has sort of been tweaked, modified or replaced along the way.
The XM would spend plenty of quality time over several stays with Blenheim's Mark Stead of Big Shed Customs. The first, after a soda blast, was the more pressing bodywork, mostly repairs, but the car was soon trailered back to recess the firewall and have the shock towers notched. Now, why would anyone go and do that?
Like anything, it got out of hand. Originally was supposed to have a Windsor motor in it, maybe injection. I looked at supercharging it as well. And then like anything with motorsport or cars, all things got out of hand. Sitting in a hotel one night, came across some measurements for a Boss 290 motor. Thought, oh, I wonder if that fits, and promptly got home on the weekend and started measuring it up. And to my amazement, it looked like it was going to fit. So axed the Windsor motor and decided we'd go down the track of something that was injected, something reliable with really good tunable performance. And then basically the rest is snowballed from there.
And even with that surgical intervention, space is still very tight under the Falcon's bonnet.
It's got about a millimetre gap in some areas, and the rest of the areas it's sort of small pinky finger gap between everything. Sits on non-flame bushes, so it's quite solid in there as well. But it's certainly a dog to get out of the engine bay. It's a front clip comes off, motor and transmission gets slid out the front, so it's not an easy engine to put in there. I wanted the sleeper look, I wanted it to look sleek, almost like it was supposed to be in that engine bay from factory.
And with the 5.4 litre quad-cam Boss V8 sitting up front, Mike wasn't about to leave the remaining mechanicals to 64 spec. RRS's catalogue was given a good workout with their rack and pinion steering and coilovers up front. Out back, a 3-link joined by QA1 adjustable coilovers. The brakes too were given a good shove into the 21st century with components from RRS, PBR and DBA. Even the cabin cops some tasteful mod cons in the form of BMW E36 convertible seats. The modifications pushed the Falcon firmly into pro touring style, but it was crucial that the XM stayed recognisable as the car Michael fell for to start with.
Definitely it was very important to keep it looking the way it originally was supposed to be. There's lots of subtle mods on the car. Rear wheel arches have been pumped out, bumpers have been recessed in, the bulge on the bonnet's been pushed up a little bit, so there's lots of little wee subtle mods like that I think unless you're a purist you wouldn't actually notice them there. What I've done is definitely not a lot of people's taste, putting big wheels on with little rubber band tyres and and big brakes, but I mean, each to their own. So it sort of meant that you could rock up to car shows and have something that was different to what everyone else was showing. It's not the standard set of eager wheels or anything else that generally goes on cars. Just have something that's low slung, modern suspension, modern engine, go really quick and stop really quick as well. So yeah, it is quite cool.
The car's plates, they reference the Van Morrison track released in the car's birth year of 64. Michael reckons that Mr. Morrison's Irish heritage ties in with the car's green hue pretty nicely too. The Falcon might never be called done, but that's something that can be said for the guy behind the wheel too.
No, I think it'd be wrong to get a cure for petrol headness. I think you're best to just keep following it and enjoy it. And smell of rubber and smell of petrol and going fast really quickly. And it's a buzz that I don't think I'll ever get rid of.
Right, thanks to our mates at Mount Shop, we're shed raiding the south. This week, it's the collection of Canterbury's Mal Hurrell.
Way back years ago, probably 40 years ago, I got the bug. Started building a sea cab actually in my earlier days, and then from there moved into the Chevys, sold that to buy our first house. After that, the bug was still there, and I'd changed jobs. I was building buses, and we looked after a lot of kids over those years. So my wife Jill was looking after the children, and I was probably in the workshop building cars, and one thing led to another. So this is where we are today.
It's a collection that's grown to overflowing Mal's shed. And of course, there's always the ones that got away too. One in particular is a well-known and well-travelled New Zealand hot rod.
Probably the best car I built was 32 three-window coupe, and I wanted to build that different. As with most of my cars, I like to be different from the norm, and so yeah, that was probably one of my favourite cars. And then I decided to get into, I like the roadsters and hot rodding one side, bit of classic the other side, you know. I don't have a favourite as such really, I don't think, you know. Our Firebird's been with us for a long time, and that's not going anywhere either, so yeah. So we just carry on doing what we're doing. Don't know what the next project is. So, but it'll happen.
So there's a quality cross-section of hot rods, cruisers, and even a bit of muscle in there. And while you couldn't accuse Mal of being a one-eyed Ford or Chev guy, there is an obvious theme in play, with just one notable exception.
The Craig Steers and the Harry Orchards of this days gave me a bit of a rub up when I bought the coupe. Asked me when I was going to paint it and get the shine back on it and stuff like that. But I said, no, mate, that's going to stay the way it is. I've got enough shiny cars. But yeah, a bit out of the norm, but you know, it's a cool car, yeah. Different ways of having different cars, I suppose. Instead of having the one car, and you know, I can have a choice of what I've got and what I like, you know. And pretty much what I've got here, you know, the cars I've always dreamed of owning, I suppose. Yeah, so, happy as.
The steel 32 5-window boasts a very rapid small block shift. However, its internals remain a bit of a mystery. There's been little need to crack it open for a look. The car was purchased from expat Kiwi Dion Wilcox in Brisbane, and it was Dion's influence too behind the recent build of Mal's 32 Roadster.
So he's got one pretty much identical, and we were discussing the car, and as I headed away from my holiday, I just about owned that car over there. It wasn't until I got home and then sort of thought, nah, it was a glass car and it's probably not my own car. And so in the end, I did say to him, I said, well, I'm going to do something similar, do you mind? And he said, go for it, you know. Yeah, so I started collecting parts and basically built it out of everything brand new, you know, and built it on similar wheels to him and similar styles. It came together pretty good, you know. I sort of planned to do it in 12 months and got out to about 15 months on the build. And yeah, just wanted that laid back screen, curved screen, extended hood on it, and I wanted a real hot rod, you know, to make it look, after owning the 32 coupe, I had to have something that was going to be pretty much up there to sort of keep in line with that, I suppose. Yeah, so that was a good journey building that, and like I say, it drives like a dream. Yeah, love it.
The Pontiac Firebird is a family favourite. Brought in from the States in 2005, the rust-free car was stripped down and repainted and a new interior kit put through it. It's powered by a 400 big block and 4-speed. Another good US find was this low-mileage 58 Ford. A late-night find on Craigslist found the seller still spinning spanners in the shed at 4 a.m. local time. The deal was done in a matter of hours, and just the next day, it was sitting at Kiwi Shipping, ready for a boat ride to its new home. Others like this 55 Hardtop were a local score just too good to pass up, while the Biscayne belongs to son Kurt. The 58 Impala is the current focus of Mal's attention. Oh, but there's also a 55 pickup copping an LS in the shed next door too. It seems Mr. Hurrell is far from finished.
I don't know whether I build another hot rod or not. It's hard to say, but yeah, I just enjoy exactly what I've got in the garage now, you know. So yeah, and there's no more room for any more anyway. So, it's just the passion. Everybody said you got a busy life, and I said yeah, but I still feel like 30 in the brain, you know. And it's hopefully we've got a few years to keep on going and doing it, you know. So I'm sure something new will pop in. Yeah.
Amazing results, even at full sight.
You're back with Teng Tools Muscle Garage. Right, thanks to Maguire's, we're off to Pukekohe Park Raceway for the Rebel Roundup. Now in its 5th year, the Roundup is all about celebrating the style and character of days long past.
We wanted to give these people an area where they felt comfortable parking their cars, you know. But some of the cars were built in the 50s and 60s. They don't compete with today's show rod, and nor should they. And although today's show rods are cool, these guys are just as cool, and they need a place to call home. Always tradition, never trend, you know, and I'd sort of like to live by that.
The Rebel Roundup is a show of shows. The Prima Nationals gather plenty of the country's best traditionally styled hot rods on the hillside. Below sits the Custom Boulevard, catering to the increasing number of chop top and ground scraping traditional customs on our shores. The Petrolhead show area has a wider catchment, being pre-1980, but is limited to 100 vehicles.
And we're lucky enough at Pukekohe Park to have a little bit of use of the track so we can do some flag drop drag racing demonstrations. None of what we do is about a race, it's about a portrayal of a time gone by.
The old hot rods have always been cool, and they grow in popularity, but I think there's an authenticity to it, and it's almost like the ultimate form of recycling. So this is probably one of the country's best environmentally friendly events in terms of recycling old machinery. So a lot of fun, yeah, a lot of fun.
You know, it wasn't that long ago, maybe 20 years ago, there were very few traditional cars on the road, with the whole billet thing and all that sort of stuff. But for us, we're traditional, that's it, and we'll keep the focus on that. If other people want to join that group, that's fine. If you want to do something else, that's also very fine as well, because you need that variety. And it's great to go to a car show like this where you see a little bit of everything, English cars, stock cars behind us, all sorts of things. I think that's what keeps people interested.
It's a 1959 Dodge Lancia Coronet. Yeah, I would call it a mild custom. Took the door handles off, scallops, flake pipes, lowered it, and that's about it. Wheels. Oh, there's a little bit of metal flake here, there, and everywhere. That started off with buying a steering wheel that was just metal flake, and then it progressed from there. Just added to it.
It's clearly a long way from when it left the showroom floor, so why only a mild custom? Well, that's the term that indicates you're improving the form the factory gave you. There's no heavy body mods like roof chops, channeling or sectioning. Cars like the Dodge make for a great head start in this style, looking every bit of custom straight from the factory.
The coupes with a post basically have a square roof line, and all they look like is a four-door car that they've made into a two-door car. But with these, the Lancers and that, they've just sleeked them right out, basically. Like it's had a roof job, but it hasn't had a roof job. And you see, I haven't paid for done the chroming yet, because I'll probably get arrested for robbing a bank. Because chroming's not as cheap as it used to be.
A little more rapid in nature was the Corvette of Dave Best.
It's a 65 Corvette. It's got a 410 small block Chevy in it. It's running Hillborn injection. That's a little thing that I run on all my cars. My point of difference is I run injections. Little triple plate clutch going into a Jericho 4-speed, and a very much modified Corvette rear end.
Bought out of California in the late 80s, the previous owner's looming tax day bill presented a great opportunity for Dave.
It ran at the Winter Nationals in '74 with a tunnel ram small block in it. So it had a little bit of history over there as a drag car. We brought it back here. It's had many different engines in it, and then, I don't know, about 10 years ago I think we did this rebuild. And at the time when we first started doing it, we were going to sort of compete in Targa, and because it sort of took so long to get it done, the economics of running in Targa got sort of a bit carried away, so I thought, we'll make it a really tough street car. And as it's turned out, it's probably a little bit too much for the street. I think people sort of appreciate the lines of a Corvette. Not everyone's cup of tea, but they're a great little car to have fun in, and this one really honks along, so,
Looking a bit too fresh for someone who's been up and driving the 200Ks from Tupou since the early hours was Bob in his Model A Boattail. A car we've got used to seeing, well, pretty much everywhere.
But definitely, it's cars are meant to be driven, and whether it's early morning drives up in the mountains around Lake Taupo or drag racing, we'll give it a shot, and it's a great car to be out in, really good fun.
And despite taking a scenic route up the Leadfoot driveway just the weekend before, that little indiscretion wouldn't keep Bob and wife Julie from hitting the road for the Roundup.
It's a 1928 Model A Ford Boattail, originally built out of Michigan. We acquired the car in the UK and then brought it down with us to New Zealand, where it was then certified and registered. So totally road legal, Model B engine, 1932, so 4-banger, and trying to keep it as original and as authentic as we can, and just repairing things as we break them through use and racing and anything else we fancy doing. It's a real great experience. It's an immensely rewarding car, exciting to drive, fun to drive, and very reliable, despite what I try and do over the different events.
The car's a 1964 Mercury Comet Caliente, which is hot in Spanish, just so you know. The car was sort of like, well, it is now on its way towards being period correct for a 64 super stock. So that's my aim, is to have everything done to it to where it'd be just like if somebody was driving it in 64 as a super stock drag car.
The Comet runs a lumpy 289 Windsor dressed with plenty of period-correct aftermarket speed equipment, backed by a tough C4 and a 9-inch. The stance is bang on. Not surprising really, when John's had a fair while to plan this, a car he's had his sights on for many years.
Ever since I was a very, very young fella, I remember seeing one in a magazine that was just one of those things that's never left me. Bit of an oddball, They've got a great history and certainly a racing history, certainly a drag racing history. Yeah, for me it was one of those ones, if I was going to have a street car, what would it be? And that was always it. So when one came up for sale, that was it for me, yeah.
The Comet's period look, of course, does make some concessions when compared to the offerings of modern technology, but that's really only a problem if you make it one.
Running a 4.5-inch wide rim on the front with a tyre that's not up to modern day spec, I suppose, means that you can't go around a corner at 80 miles an hour, and it's but you drive a car accordingly. If everyone went the 22 route, well then we wouldn't have these sorts of cars around. So I think it's important for if you pick an era and you stick to it, and for me that's the era that I want the car to look like. So yeah, challenges sure, but not really. I don't care.
Teng Tools Muscle Garage was proudly brought to you by Teng Tools. Get organised. Mount Shop, undercar specialists. Maguire's, people who love cars love Maguire's. And Need a Car, the easy way to research and buy cars online.